it's it's a large nebulous organization. So, but I'm going to start off with saying kind of a larger background of why local is not being prioritized in our food system in general. Historically, like right after World War II, like consumer demand really changed. And it was like this land of abundance and plenty and technological innovation. So everybody was just all about progress. And so it comes from a kind of like good place of our distancing of our food system. And it was all about like growing food where that food item had a comparative advantage to grow. So potatoes are grown in Idaho and Maine. Tomatoes are all grown in Florida. Oranges, almonds are all grown in California. So that's kind of why we grow all of our items in one place where they grew the best, and we kind of developed this vast food system of plenty around that, affordable, making it affordable and plenty. But the unintended consequences of this dynamic is that it created long distance infrastructure that has made food less healthy from the distance it has to travel, the disintegration of local supply chains and connections to our community through food, and then a fiscal circulatory systems that are like lifebloods of these big food companies that are based off of that long distance system. And it's really the food system at a very large scale, especially the food system that services institutions and restaurants and most of the places where we go to purchase food as a consumer or as a part of a larger group where food is being served is it makes money off of what's called the rebate system. And these are contracted programs between large food service providers and producers. And throughout my presentation, I'm going to explain how that system works in a little bit more detail. Next slide. Okay, here's just a kind of quick picture of what the food supply chain is. The product supply chain is different based on what type of product is. You know, it can be different for technological items or your clothes, and even like where the food ends up ultimately can look a little different on its supply chain. But they can kind of be broken down into 5 different categories. There's the producer or farm stage, the processing and manufacturing stage, which also has a distribution that goes in between that. There's the distribution stage where when that product is kind of finally made, can then go to its final outlet, which is can be through a food service provider at like a hospital or a university, which is like a Sodexo, which I'm going to go into more in the slide, or it can be a grocery store, or a convenience store or a restaurant, any type of food retail outlet. And then of course there's the what I call the forgotten stage, waste management or recovery, which we're not going to get into tonight, but I have dabbled in food recovery as well, and it's an important part that's forgotten in our food supply chain. Next slide. So in terms of like what is predominantly happening in the institutional food service, there are which an institution is like a large anchor institution where lots of people are going towards for a certain service, whether it be a university with lots of students, hospitals with lots of patients, lots of doctors, lots of people coming there for whatever reason. And then there's like corporate offices where people go to work. And there's public schools, there's leisure and sports stadiums. So there's a couple, there's like 5 different main ones, but that's kind of what an institution is. And then the people who manage the institution outsourced their food service and their kitchen to be completely managed by 3 main companies that are extremely large international companies. They're all in probably like the top 20 or 30 largest companies in the world, which are Sodexo, Airmark, and Compass Group. Next slide. And how the rebate system works between these large companies and the institutions is because they have such large volumes all over the US and even the world, it is broken up by country, is that the food service providers, those Sodexos, those Airmarks, those Compass Group, make a contract with large producers, with a company like Tyson's, who's selling chicken, and it applies to economies of scale. So once Sodexo uses like 1 million chicken breasts of Tyson chicken breasts, Sodexo gets a money back, a rebate back, or kickback was less better word, but it kind of describes what it is, of that, of that money from the producer. And this is how the food system makes money, is through this rebate program. And also and not only do they get money back, but there's an extra discount off the regular wholesale price on these items as well. So that keeps it like really, really low costs. And so next slide. And then what happens is that the food service management companies that are managing all these kitchens, they have all these contracts to really keep prices low. The second part of it is that because they have all these catalogs of these low prices of food stuff, they can then source or like provide that catalog to other food service entities, not just institutions, but restaurants, restaurant chains, cafes, convenience stores. I mean, it is really like endless the amount of food service retailers are still buying off of these cheap catalogs that are part of the group purchasing organizations. That's like kind of the other part of the food service management companies. It's like a square rectangle situation, which I tried to kind of show in this. Next slide. And then the corresponding GPOs that kind of manage the contracts and really the supply procurement wing of these food service management companies are also listed in this slide. So for the GPO for the food service management company Sodexo is Integra, the one for Airmark is Avendra, and the one from Compass Group, which is the biggest one out of all three, is Foodbuy. Foodbuy is huge. And like GPOs exist not just for food items, they for office supplies, for hospital equipment. I mean, they're a very large, and a lot of these big GPOs are like merging right now through different products. That's what's also happening. So I kind of built off a presentation that I was giving when I was doing this with hospitals. So there is a little bit of a healthy lens, of nutrition lens on this slide. It's like, so food for thought, how can we partially reintegrate local supply chains back and ultimately reconnect with our local food shed that provides us natural blueprint of what is healthy? That's for another debate, another day. And then the final slide is just some things to think about, which is I need to pull up. I can't read it. I guess I need some glasses. New development. Like how do we start discussing objective, holistic perspectives of the systems that are the lifeblood of our companies with colleagues? Think about creating local regional purchasing contracts and incentives. And like if you have any contacts at local institutions that would be interested in sourcing local more, let me know because I'd love to help out. And that's that. Thanks.
I think it might be helpful to hold questions until the end so we can kind of get the full picture. So thanks to Mandilyn for giving us kind of this perspective on the big bad world out there. Did I say it that way? We did want to also sort of hear from somebody who is doing this local and what are the challenges? What are the barriers to getting your product to market? And what are the wins too? Let's look at this in a positive light as well. Rick, are you able to hear us okay? Rick is online. Can we hear you, Rick? Are you able to come off mute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can't get my video working, so I don't know if you can see me or not. But
we
got the slides.
Slides shown here on the screen. So just so for the folks who are in the room, we have Rick Wood here from Summer Creek Farms. If you don't know him by his beautiful produce, you may know him by his bags of dirt that sit outside the store once we get to growing season. And so we just would love to hear from you, Rick, about your operations and anything you can add to our discussion about procuring locally.
Okay, well, Summer Creek Farm was established in 1992. We became certified in 1996 because you have to go through a 3-year transition period. Back then you did anyhow. And we are a wholesaler of certified organic produce to stores in Maryland and Virginia. We service about 15 different stores. So we only grow about 12 different crops, but we grow them in volume so that we can handle the wholesale market. We also manufacture, like you said, horticultural soils. And those horticultural soils are made from the most sustainable products available. We contain no peat, no vermiculite, no perlite, the stuff that that requires high energy inputs to make. And our soils are enhanced with organic minerals and nutrients from companies like NatureSafe that we allowed in our soils. We do face challenges in the marketplace. Biggest challenge we face right now is labor and competition of labor. A lot of the organic produce that that the stores in the region purchase comes from PA, and in PA, a lot of the growers are Mennonite or Amish, and with their structure, they use a lot of child labor that we can't have access to or don't use. So we hire our labor at the market rates, and it's hard to find people who want to work. It's hard to find people who can endure the weather and endure the physical needs of working. And it just becomes a very tough need to fill to help get, because vegetables are very intense labor wise to get to market. In Maryland, we also suffer from high taxes, which is especially exasperated when you try to buy a second farm to expand, because the property taxes become exorbitant on the second farm when you can't qualify for your homestead tax exemption that you get for your primary farm. Certainly, we have regulations in Maryland which are much more excessive than the surrounding states. Regulations, mostly environmental regulations to protect the bay. Obviously, we farm in a way that is very environmentally conscious, but that doesn't mean we still don't have to fill out all the paperwork and go through the nuances of having to deal with the different state agencies when they decide they want to show up. Weather is of a concern. We have not we've not seen really hot seasons of late. We saw actually much hotter seasons in the 90s, but we have seen a shift in the seasons. We're seeing much colder springs, warmer falls, and subsequently, recently, the last few years, colder winters, and they all affect our ability to do work on the farm, because when the winters are exceptionally cold, it keeps us from doing maintenance on equipment and stuff that we need. So once the warm weather comes in the spring, that we can get to work in the fields as fast as we can. The weather is also, like you say, colder springs, which has given us a later start to be able to get to market. And we've been trying to acquire additional land, but land prices in Maryland are exorbitant right now. And it's actually being exasperated because land prices in PA are even higher. And a lot of Amish and Mennonite farmers, especially in the northern part of the state where we're at, have been pushed out of PA and are now driving up Maryland land prices. We are an established farm with a significant investment in infrastructure. We have, our farm to buy today would be close to $1 million. And our equipment costs that we are invested in are right around $300,000. So it's a significant amount of money to grow a tomato. And we're looking to grow and continue farming for at least the next 2 decades. So we're trying to find ways to get around that. And we are exploring ways to continue our operation after those decades when I'm maybe retire or something happens, and to find a younger generation that wishes to farm and continue our legacy. We do have significant investments in equipment. The tractor on the right in this picture, we are just beginning to replace. We purchased that tractor probably about 10 years ago, paid about $45,000 for it. The replacement tractor we're replacing it with right now is costing us $100,000. The tractor on the left is a specialty tractor for us to be able to cultivate and weeds and keep fields clean without herbicides or any chemicals. And that was an over $30,000 investment, and that's really not much more than a big lawn tractor, really. So everything we turn around and do, it's a common theme on the farm that if you want to do something new, it's at least $10,000. So you have to be prepared for that. We do service our community. We do provide jobs for locals. We try to definitely open up jobs for the local community. And we also donate a lot of produce to local food banks. And that has been more appreciated since COVID, with the rise in food prices, and the amount of people who are in need of some kind of food assistance. We do a lot of that in the Frederick County area. It becomes challenging though, because fewer people know how to actually cook food. So since we are not donating prepackaged microwavable products, it becomes harder to help the lower income echelons, because they don't do home economics, they don't do cooking, they don't do anything like that in schools now. And it's been lost for multiple generations. So it's not like you go to your grandmom's house and she teaches you, because grandmom doesn't know how to do it anymore either. So this is a challenge that we constantly run, and we're working with local food groups that do take our food and distribute it to try to offer cooking classes, especially for young moms, to be able to make their own baby food and stuff. Because buying a whole food product like that and being able to cook it up yourself is definitely more economical than it is buying a prepackaged product. So a young mom on WIC can go buy a butternut squash and put it in a crock pot and end up with a lot of baby food compared to what she does if she buys prepackaged food. And that's been one of our emphasis for the last several years, to be able to get that education out. And it's now, it's winter at the farm, so it's snowy up here, and we do take a little bit of a break, and we get a little bit of a rest. Although I didn't get much today because I was repairing equipment. So that's pretty much where we're at.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we all have a million questions for Rick. I know I do, but before we get to that, let's put the last sort of piece of the puzzle in place. And maybe we're not putting this whole puzzle together tonight, but at least I think the goal here is to know where the pieces are. And so, Mike, wouldn't mind taking it on. There are some questions in the chat that I think you're going to hopefully cover about bringing more local farmers to TPSS. And so just thinking where that
Okay.
jump into your presentation.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And yes, appreciation to Mandilyn and Rick. That's very helpful to have the industrial scale perspective and then the farmer scale perspective. So I'm sure you all recognize in the last page of our annual report is always about how many local vendors we have in the store. Our hyper local vendors, which we define as within 2 miles of the store, and our local vendors, which we define as within 150 miles of the store. But how do we actually do that? So this last year we had 198 different local vendors that we were purchasing from. What the format is in the store is sorry. Each of the departments, sorry, I can't, okay, thank you. Each of the purchasing departments has a department manager and someone who's been trained as a department buyer. So those are the two folks that are in charge of putting in orders with any number of vendors, local or not. So those purchasing departments for us, beer and wine is one purchasing department, the frozen department and the grocery, so that's the center store aisles, purchase as one department, the refrigerator, where we have lots of local products, produce, obviously, which we'll talk about, and then wellness is our supplements, body care, and also miscellaneous products is a department. We have local represented in every one of those departments. So when we're talking about local, we're not just talking about produce items. So when those buyers go to make purchasing decisions, we have on our website, and when those managers and buyers get trained, they get trained on our product selection guidelines. This is just one small excerpt from those, but it says the co-op will prioritize local products that are grown and produced within a 50-mile radius of the store and regional products that are grown and produced within a 250-mile radius of the store. Those product selection guidelines lay out a number of aspirations when it comes to the products that we have in the store. They lay out our minimum standards. So, for example, we historically did not have meat for a long time. When we decided to bring meat in, it was under those guidelines that it would be certified organic meat, would be the meat that we bring in. Similarly, the produce that we sell in the store, produce is the most minimally processed. So organic certification is going to be relatively important there. So we purchase products that are either certified organic, which can be national vendors or local vendors like Rick, or local vendors that use organic practices like Mike Tabor, but are not certified. When it comes to finding those local products, there are a number of different places that we go to. We can go to existing/previous vendors. Hopefully, if the products that we have on the shelf that are local are selling well, which we'll talk about in a sec, we are just continuing to purchase them. We go to a number of food expos, some of them specifically for local products. So this picture is from the Union Kitchen Meet the Makers event that our buyers and staff went to this last year. That's an event we go to every year. They have hundreds of producers at that particular event. There's other food shows that have both national and local vendors, but getting out of the store and going to those places, especially where there's going to be a critical mass of local vendors that we can meet and make sure that the buyers are making those connections is important. There is the Sell to Us form on the website, which is one of our more utilized forms. So we get folks, again, local and national vendors that reach out to us, that know about the store, have learned about the store, and want to sell to us. They have the opportunity there. They put their contact information in. They'll typically put a sell sheet or any information about their product, and then that goes directly. It comes under my nose, but gets in the hands of those department buyers and department managers to assess the products. And then also just general networking. I was at a Washington Metropolitan Council of Governments event on Tuesday and have 2 farmers in my inbox from that. So just the more you get out and meet folks, you also come across some of these local vendors just out in general networking. Elizabeth alluded to this, but the store needs to stay in business. So we are purchasing local products that are going to sell. And luckily, all of the people on the call and all the people sitting behind me actually buy these things. And the reason we're able to support several hundred vendors is not just to do it. It is because our customers said that they want this, and they back it up by actually buying those things. So for, we've talked about it before, but for the size of the store, pretty much everything has to earn its shelf space, has to sell, and those local products sell just as well as the national products that we have around the store. Some even better. People may have heard me do the spiel before, but I think it's important when talking about local, getting a little more. I have said that we are now in the greenwashing stage of local. When you go to other larger grocery stores, they have a local display, and if you check under the hood a little, it's usually from outside of 100 miles away. So folks know that local is sort of a popular buzzword. It has caught on, but it is important, just like we are more specific with our environmental practices, that we are a little more sophisticated with the way that we talk about local. So there's really two locals. There's items that are locally grown, like Rick's products, like Mike's products, and then there's items that are locally produced. So there's a little bit of overlap, but for products that are locally grown, largely we're supporting that for environmentalism and sustainability reasons. So those are things that are getting to the store faster, and food waste is one of the number one contributors is a huge climate issue. So getting that stuff to the store fresher, hopefully getting it into people's refrigerators and having it used and consumed before it starts getting slimy is very important. Often those local items come with less packaging. So again, the example I always give, Mike Tabor's apples, the crates that we merchandise them in, that is how he transports them from Pennsylvania down to the store and hands them off to our employees. So no plastic wrap ever touches those apples from the time he picks them to the time we get them to you all. Less resources to get them to the store. So again, trucks traveling from California versus trucks traveling from Thurmont, Maryland. Far fewer resources in order to get those things to the store. And then again, there is a component where we are supporting local and community businesses when we're doing that type of purchasing. For items that are locally produced, so a lot of those things that are coming out of Union Kitchen, those are not necessarily being made with locally grown ingredients. Some of them are, but some of them are mango juices and passion fruit juices. I don't know if Rick has any mango trees on his farm, but I highly doubt it. So we do count products that are headquartered in Maryland as local products when it comes to that count at the end of the year. That is a different kind of local product. We are supporting that in order to keep the money that's spent at the store circulating within the local economy. Often those vendors are small or startup vendors, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And then again, you do still have the advantage of it taking fewer resources in order to get those local products, especially the ones that are directly distributed to the co-op. Local can look very different. There was a point in time when Honest Tea was counted. It was a Bethesda-based company that showed up when we ran the report for the annual report every year, and before it sold to Coke, but Honest Tea showed up as a Maryland-based company.
Business too. Yeah.
Versus Believe in Bread that started selling to us under the Maryland cottage food laws. The owner still comes in and stocks the shelves herself. So again, when we count those items, they all, under our definition, are local. But I think we are more thinking in our heads about the Believe in Bread type of local versus the Honest Tea type of local. So helpful again in being a little more sophisticated about this conversation. Just to think a little bit more about what we specifically are trying to support when we say we want to support local vendors. I think it is erring more towards the side of those smaller vendors is what we largely have in our head. The co-op still offers a retail on-ramp that is increasingly non-existent at corporate grocery stores. When I first got into this business, Whole Foods did a tremendous job of local buying. They had, folks at each of the stores. They were going out to these expos. They were making purchasing decisions at the local stores. You could walk in with a new and interesting product and talk to someone in the store and get a purchasing decision. Increasingly, and certainly since they were purchased by Amazon, they are wanting to push everything through distribution. And this is not just Whole Foods. This is, a lot of, corporate grocery stores. They, instead of their produce buyer, having order guides from 15 or 16 different farms, they would rather have the efficiency of having, one set of bananas they're looking at, one set of broccoli, one set of kale, ordering from one vendor, knowing when it's coming, and moving on. And that's true across the store. So that if local items are in distribution, for example, if a Union Kitchen vendor is able to sell enough things to get into UNFI distribution, then Whole Foods will carry that product and will market it as appropriately as local. But it is increasingly hard. There's the old restaurants in New York that every restaurant in New York requires 3 years of waitering experience in New York City. And so how does anyone ever get started in that cycle? So how does anyone ever gain enough sales volume in order to get into distribution if those stores are only buying things that are already in distribution? You can sort of see where that's going. So it is, again, increasingly important that we have co-ops and independent stores that are providing that on-ramp for folks that are largely, it is people that are graduating from farmers market and trying their hand at retail for the first time. Often when those types of folks come to us, their packaging is not very flashy, if non-existent in some cases. There have certainly been times in my time here that we have created and printed off a UPC label for those types of vendors that literally, don't even have that. They have no printed, information on their packaging, and we have to have some way to actually sell their stuff. So, again, it is in every one of these steps in having additional vendors for our buyers to call or email, to know, how quickly or slowly their products sell, to help them along a little bit in some of these, either retail practices or, regulatory and compliance practices. It takes commitment. It takes, being intentional, having a mandate from those product selection guidelines and saying, as a community, we are going to support this, and we want to see these products on the shelf. And so, that is where you see largely in the grocery industry a retreat from that type of buying, is just looking for every little efficiency that you can get, having fewer people working in the store, fewer people making purchasing decisions, planning out, a planogram at corporate down in Austin for stores all around the country, as opposed to being responsive to the local community. We have, since the cottage food laws changed in 2019 in Maryland, we have been able to take advantage of the cottage food laws. So that means that is products that are not being created in a commercial kitchen, though you still have to register with the state of Maryland, and there is a relatively low income threshold. So, if you start at the co-op, and, your product sells and you're able to get into a couple more stores, eventually you will need to cook at a commercial kitchen. But again, it lowers some of those barriers of entry. So the folks, who are interested in trying their hand at a food business, at least have some way to try that. Our wonderful partners over at Crossroads have an incubator program through their kitchen. And Union Kitchen obviously has a huge incubator program. So there is broadly in the area places that folks can go if they're interested in trying their hand at making maple pecans or and and selling them at a retail establishment. And again, to the Honest Tea example, these local businesses grow. I remember there was the very first store I worked in Brooklyn. Guy came in and told the story of being a chef, and his wife was gluten free, and he had these frozen dumplings that he was making, and we were the first store to pick them up. Now however many years later, 15, 16 years later, that company grew tremendously. They're on the shelves in a lot of natural food stores around the country. He and his wife subsequently sold the company, and while that may technically still show as a Brooklyn local product, these companies do grow. So Amy's at once upon a time was a local company for someone, and now is a gigantic company. So it's important to again know why you are purchasing local and look for those sort of values drifts. Local is not a panacea for everything that we're looking out of to support in the food system. And just because folks are local doesn't again mean that they are conducting their businesses in the way that we want to be associated with. So important to sort of keep an eye and make sure that as these folks grow, plenty of them grow and change just fine. But it's an important thing is there is sort of a way that folks grow through the food system and get larger. So looking for that values drift is important. So all that really means that local sourcing, when it's done well, is difficult and is sort of never complete. There's always a new generation of products to be aware of in the natural food industry. There's new trends that are coming up all the time, and so you always want to be on the cutting edge of that as a small cooperative, especially. And so I will stop there.
Thanks, Mike.
No.
Before we get to questions, we thank all for coming, to the folks who are online as well. Please put your questions in the chat. We do want to throw it open to questions. I guess I would ask fellow board members to sit back and listen to our members at this time, because we'll have plenty of time to be hashing over some of these issues and looking closely at what the store's policies are and whether we think we are headed in the right direction. But to inform that, we would really like to hear from our members. So if folks have questions in the room or online, please feel free to raise a hand or shout out, or for a small group here.
Well, that's a great question.
Sure,
I know. I mean, you may have mentioned this and I missed it, it's a little late. What percentage of all the 100 and some vendors are local per the guidelines, either uber local or regionally local?
Yeah, so we sell 198 local vendors per those guidelines. I don't know what the overall number of vendors that we like individual companies that we have in the store. I mean, it's in the thousands, but we have 198 vendors that qualify as local.
No idea, like, in terms of the number of products that are shelved or offer that are local.
I mean, it's 198, vendors. So, I mean, it's at least, 600 or 700. Yeah, but as a percentage, no, I don't know.
What stands in the way of us having more local produce specifically?
I mean, really seasonality and, being able to, get folks that will deliver to us. But aside from that, I mean, nothing.
Do you see the impediment being, before we get to the point where you're able to order something? Is it infrastructure within within our local system in terms of what farmers need in order to get product to store? And that might be a question for me or Rick in terms of what does it take to actually physically get product to a retail setting versus why you might sell at a farmer's market or try to sell to a larger institution.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that, and Rick, I mean, feel free to talking about some of the impediments to selling, but there are, so in Pennsylvania, as Rick sort of talked about, there's Lancaster Farm Fresh, there's the common market, there are more aggregators there that have a larger number of products available, and especially during the spring and summer that are easier to order from. In Maryland, it is mostly individual farms that have a smaller number of products. Rick said he grows 12 things and grows them very well, and we sell his stuff. But there are no distribution and aggregation facilities for the Maryland farmers either. The farms are largely in Western Maryland or on the Eastern Shore, and so those are all. Rick is great to work with. He'll run a truck down to us when we need it, but that's not always the case for some of those folks. And a lot of them can get retail prices when they sell at farmers markets as opposed to wholesale prices. So that's. So do you have anything else to add, Rick?
Well.
Give us a second to work this piece out. Are we on mute again? Yeah, so he might be on twice.
Okay.
Yeah, we seem to be having some audio issues. Rick, if there's anything you want to, if you're not able to get on mic in a way that doesn't deafen all of us, maybe you could, if you had anything to add in the chat, but maybe too, we could collect some questions that he might be willing to answer, offline when we're done with all of this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, just to fill in the picture, self and others. You described, the 198 local vendors and the produce. Where do you source the rest of those? I mean, how and where do you source?
Yes.
Just take the picture.
Sure. Yeah. So produce is either direct, like in Rick,
Right.
through those consolidators, like Lancaster Farm Fresh would be the major example, or through a national vendor like Four Seasons. So one of those three.
Okay. So directly from the farmers who are capable of, or Lancaster Fresh in mostly Pennsylvania, to still send a regional.
Sure.
But you count Pennsylvania farmers as part of your regional 158?
If they're within 150 miles, so it's not everywhere in Pennsylvania, but that does touch some of southern Pennsylvania.
And is Lancaster able to separate?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we fixed the sound. Part of the problem we run into is that if you're in the wholesale vegetable business, Pennsylvania produce will be much cheaper than Maryland produce. So Maryland farmers are much more expensive to farm in Maryland. So most of the farmers choose farmers markets where they can get a higher dollar value. We moved out of the farmers market business about 10 years ago for personal reasons, because of the amount of time it took for farmers markets. But the only way that we can sell wholesale is that we have to chain together about 10 to 12 stores every trip. We run 2 trips a week in season two, and you guys are one of our great customers on that 2 trip or a week stopover. So to your question, to get more local produce, quite frankly, it just doesn't exist. You can't buy it if it's not there. And most of the farmers that are selling it, they're either selling at farmers markets where they're getting a higher dollar value, or they're not producing enough produce to make it worth their while to make the drive to you. You're about an hour from me.
Yes.
I was just, wondering if we could get more local vegan products in, especially at the holidays. Like, I can't even special order a vegan pumpkin pie, and they're not anywhere to be found. I have to go to the root market. I don't know, maybe Whole Foods sells them. I don't know. I'm used to putting stores in. But I mean, it's a problem just to get very basic whole pies. Now, I might be able to buy a slice. I don't even know if that's in the store. But if I'm looking for something to take, it's.
Yeah, no, I can definitely look into that.
And when we're short on shelf space, vegetarians can eat vegan, but vegans can't eat vegetarian. And I'm one of the people with 25% country has dairy. So I'm way to conserve shelf space. No, I know that's not an issue here at our co-op.
I am looking at the clock. I'm always mindful of time, but I also don't want to cut anyone off, especially in the room, if you have any more questions. But I think,
Well,
yeah.
I'll just say that, I did serve on the local foods committee. We wrote a report, it's probably somewhere on the website still. And one of the things that we did was we interviewed other food co-ops about how did they increase the amount of local produce, because they face the same challenges we face. One of the things that comes to mind is that, like, some of them will actually like reach out to farmers and make contracts and say, grow this much stuff for us, and then we promise to buy it, and then that's the way the farmer can grow a thing they would otherwise not be able to grow. Or some of them like buy land and started their own farm. Obviously, that's not the thing you would just do first, but like once you have built up a customer base, then it's the thing you can think about.
What?
I'm happy to answer, like, I'd be happy to be a resource in the future. That's helpful. Go ahead.
If I can add, one of the things that we've had stores do is they do reach out and give us a list of what they want grown, and that needs to be done in January. But we also have some of our customers that advance us money in January for seed, fertilizer, and those things, so that we can produce more product for them. And then we pay the quote unquote loan back with produce.
Just looking at the chat and making sure we handle Phil's question about the percentage of sales that come from local products, and Mike gave it that try to get that number from IT, which is that.
Thank you. I mean, this has been a great forum. Encourage you to do something like this, similar, to kind of dive more deeply into the vulnerability of our regional food system. I think TPSS is probably a higher percentage of local sales than any other place in the region, but we need to get others to follow that in order to support our local producers.
Yes, I agree. It is not a good thing that we are increasingly differentiated in this way. We do not want to be the only one that is doing local buying like this.
Well, I think we will wrap it up, the discussion for tonight. I think the board has work ahead of it to figure out what next steps are in this journey. And I think we look forward to more deep dives like this, more learning experiences, more hearing from the members about this. I just want to thank Rick for your time tonight, and Mandilyn as well for coming back and shedding some light. And then, as you know, we're all very thankful for Mike and his expertise in this realm, and his willingness to look at the practices and consider how we can improve. So thanks to all of you for coming along on this ride with us.
Thank you. So you folks are welcome.